Session, we're going to practice on the standard C# code, like the variable, the loops, the if statement, the class, and so on. So you don't need to open a Unity, just open the Visual Studio from your Start tab and search for Visual Studio that you have, and then go to create a new project. And you just need a Blink solution. Actually, this is coming here, so I cannot see well. Okay, and then hit next. Yes, the name is not important, so don't even mind it. And then here, go to New and File, and select the C# class. Because there are other things for HTML, anything, the other things, we just need the C#. So yeah, you have this, you can delete this one. And then, yeah, don't even need that. Because we're not going to write a program, we just want to teach you the basic things. First, start from the variables. We cannot just say 12. Because the C# compiler said, okay, what is 12? Is it a whole number? Is it with decimal? What is that? Is it even a text? For example, room number 12, which is not a number. We don't mean that 12 is a number, but actually might be a text. So it doesn't know what is that. So we have to declare that using, for example, if we mean that the 12 is the whole number. This is useful when you want to, for example, you have a player that wants to collect a coin and to increase the score. For example, 1 coin, 2 coin. We don't have 1.5 coin, yes? So that is a whole number. So for scoring and, for example, collecting thing, the int is good. So I teach you in a way that you know that in gaming, you have to understand this so you can choose the best variables and functions. So that's why I give you examples about the game. So, for example, we say int score is equal. If you're using the Visual Studio 2022, then it shows you, it tries to predict the next thing. So if you select tab, it will show you, it will highlight you for that. But if you don't want that, just try to neglect it. So we have the int, for example, we start from 0 score. Because when you start a game, you don't have any score, so that is 0. But with the player, for example, collect the coins, then I would increase. So the score is I'm sorry, what is this? So the score is plus equal to 1. It means that one score has been added. For example, you try to collect 1 coin and 1 coin has been added. Also, you can write score plus plus. It means that 1 score has been added. You can also add, for example, you have a very giant coin, a shiny one that give you 10 score. Okay, so here it is 0. You added 1, now the score is 1. You added another score, now the score is 2. Now 2 plus 10 is equal to 12. So here we have 12 scores. The next thing is that, for example, you see in the game, we have the cooldown. For example, an enemy tries to attack you with a sword. He doesn't attack just continuously and spam the attack. For example, it hit you with a sword, then it waits, for example, for 1.5 seconds, and then it will hit you. In this scenario, it's better to use the float, which is for decimal numbers. For example, we say the first letter is usually the lowercase, and the other one are the capital alphabet. It's the cooldown timer or anything. It is 1.5 or 1 or 2. Anything, you can even say 1. Let's remember it's best practice to put F here. In the context of the game, it means, for example, 1 second and 0.6. And you want to give your character a name. So you don't actually directly say, for example, the knight. No, it's nothing. You have to first say that is a string. String means that it is a text. So string name is equal to, you have to use double quote. Okay? Then you say the name is knight. And don't forget the semicolon for every line of code. So the string, for example, the name might be hero, anything. You can change this and change this, but you cannot change that. That is for the text. The next variable is the boolean. For example, you want to check if the player is alive. You say is alive. For example, at first the player is alive, so we say yes, true. But if it dies, then it becomes false, and you show, for example, you say if that is the case, then show a game over scene. So these are the most common variable type that you will use. There is also enum, which I will tell you later. Now we go to condition if. If is for decision making. For example, we have the previous one. You say if, and the parentheses, and you say is alive is equal to true. Don't say equal. When you say equal, it means that you're assigning things to that. When you say equal, it means just checking. You don't assign anything to the alive. You can also delete this part. This also means that. So if this is alive, I say comma, for example, continue the game. And if it's not alive, else, I use comma when it becomes like that. It means that don't execute the code, because if I say something like this is not correct, and it means that we say the logic here, and then later we can change that to something more logic with the codes. But for now, I just say this. Else, for example, restart the game. Okay. Also, if you want to check that, if the player is not alive, you should say it's equal to false, or you can say, for example, you want to say if player is not alive, it means not. So actually this part means false. If you say this would be, it means that if you want to check if the player is alive or if the condition is true, it means, but here it means if the condition is not true. Also, I can put it here. If the player is not alive, for example, say, just change these places, else just do that. And if we have multiple conditions, we can use else if, and say the condition and say else. But for the boolean we have this true or false, so it doesn't really make sense. So yes, so that was about if. And it also worked not only with the boolean but also with the number. For example, imagine that we have the int health is 100, and we say if health is equal to 100, it means we are checking if this has the full health, then do something. Or for example, we can say if this is more than or equal to 10, it means that the health should be 10 or more than that. For example, 20 from 11, 12, 13. Yes, so yes, you can add some else if and so on. So that's it. Now we go to the loops, but before that we need to explain the arrays. And imagine that we have int health. For example, we say the player 1 health, just for somebody I say just health 1 is 12, and int 2 is like that. Can change the numbers, or 15. You have this, but you know, we just repeated something over and over. But we could use arrays just to put them in one line. For arrays, it means array. It means that I want to put to make the variable more than one variable. So it's int health is equal to, for example, the thing that we had above, 20 and 50. Okay, so our array has 3 variables with these numbers, 12, 20. In other words, we can say that health. So what does it mean, health 0? It means the first index, and index always starts from 0. 0, 1, 2. So what is in health 0? It is 12. The health 1 is 20. And the index of 2 means 0, 1, 2, that is 50. Okay? Now imagine that this player has health, but we want to inflict a damage, which is 10. It means that, for example, I hit the player with a sword that will subtract 10 health from them. For example, 12 minus 10 would be 2. So the health would be 2 for the first player. Or so I cannot just say, okay, health oh, what is that? Health 0. Okay, damage. It means that subtract the health, which is 12, subtract it the amount of the damage. You can say 10 here, or can simply say the damage, and you don't need to again write int damage because you already have declared the damage. Okay, now imagine that you want to do that for all the okay, well, for this it didn't do that, so I'm going to write it one by one so it would be easier for you to understand. I don't want to repeat that again and again. None of them are necessary. Why? No. That's why we use the loop. For example, for loop. It means that in that piece of code, it just repeatedly circle through this array and do the, for example, the damage thing. I use for. I say int_i. It doesn't matter because int_j, int_k, but we usually say I is equal to 0. It means that we start from the first index. Then let me skip that part, I will explain it later, and say I++. So I have to put my code inside this. Then I say that here, the health I so it means that, for example, the first one, I is 0, so that is the something that we have before, which was what? It was this 0. That's the same thing, isn't it familiar? Okay. The next time it will be ++. It means that I would be 1 because you have added 1. So that will be health 1. Oh. Okay. So no, I is 1. Again, you add another ++. It means that 1 + 1 is 2. So that would be health 2. And then do the operation. So, but for how many times does it continue? It cannot, for example, if you have 3 variables, we cannot continue it forever. So it'll continue until this length. We have 3 of them, so it has to work 3 times. But why we didn't say equal? Because it starts from 0. 0, 1, 2. But the length is 3. So it has to be lower than that. So that's it. I hope that you understand the arrays. We can use with different things. For example, we want to spawn 5 enemies, and we say that, for example, lower than 5, just spawn that. Also, we have for loop, and also have for each. So the variable that we are having here is int or int. You can give any name. You can give, for example, I don't know, the sick heal, int life in, and we say the name of the array. You say everything that is here, okay, bring in that, and then you say You have to, if you give it the life, you have to say life here too. But everything that is there, just as before. Okay? So all of them, everything that is in this array, are each of them are going to lose 10 health, which means that we apply them 10 damage. So what is the difference between for and for each loop? Well, the for each loop doesn't originally change these values. It's just used with a copy of these values. Delete that. So you just work with the copies of that, so the original value stays the same. But in the for loop, it works with the original values. For example, 12 minus 10 would be 2, and the health for the first player is then 2. So it has permanently changed the values. So it depends on your usages. If you want to keep the original value, use the for each. But if you don't mind to change the original values, use the for loop. Also, not only we have, let me go to the previous example. Oh, where was that? Okay, let's go to the previous example. We don't need this or this. We have arrays. We also could use lists. It also contains different variables, just like the arrays, but I tell you the differences after I explain this. So, the list int. It doesn't matter, it could be a string, but here we have int, so we use that. And then, so we give them a name and then say new list, something exactly like that. Okay, and then we're going to, for example, say those numbers. It was, I think it was 12, 50, I don't know, just give it another number. Okay, so we have this, and then we want to decrease 10 from them. Actually, this is the same, but the difference is that instead of length, use count. So we have this structure, and then instead of length, we say count. So what is the difference between an array and a list? Arrays are used for those times that you have fixed number of for example, items or variables. For example, we have 3 numbers here if you want to use array. But for the list, for example, you have 3 here, you can later add, for example, health dot add. I can add another number. You can add, you can remove even from some indexes, or you can directly insert that. But for the arrays, you cannot do that. So when to use lists and when to use arrays. So as we before the arrays, you know, they are fixed. So that is simpler, you know, they are lightweighted and they are good and more performance when you know the number of things that you want to put in that. But the lists are slower, especially if you have lots of data. But if you don't know how many of them would be there, then you have to use the lists. So that's the difference. The next thing that we will cover is about enum or enumeration. Okay, about this. This is about a list of options that you might have. They're not type of a string or integer. There's something that we have defined. For example, we have a player, and for example, it has, we want to say, it has some items like sword, helmet, belt. You know, we want to put them as something that we have defined ourselves, and we want to work with those things. For example, if we want to say that if the item that we have is a sword, increase the damage. If this is the bells, increase the defense, something like that. So enums are good for that. There are other usages too, but we say the basic thing that and something that is used for the context of making beginner or intermediate game. Just to know this amount is completely enough. So we have enum item, then we declare it like this. For example, we have sword, we have belt, we have helmet or shield. You can add at any number that you want. And also, so according to that, I want to teach you switch. Switch is for example, you say, if you select this, if the case is that, you do that. If you selected the other options, you do that. So we're going to work with the switch. Actually, this switch helps you to check one variable and take different actions according to that. For example, we have decided that our item, first we need to declare a variable of item type. For example, as we say int health or a string name, we say item, for example, I give it the name current item, okay? For example, for other variable, for example, for a string name is equal to, we have double quotation and the name inside this. But this, you have to exactly say this, that, and then we have the option. Imagine that the player has chose the sword. Now we have the switch. So we want to switch according to what? To the current item. Because our current item could be anything, could be sword, belt, shield. So we'll work according to that. And then we say case. We cannot change the name. It is switch and case. They're the default things, so you cannot change that. If there is item.sword, then for example, we later add the code for example, increase the damage. Or we can give different sword, for example, sword 1 increase damage for 10, sword 2 increase damage for 20, for example. Then we use the break. It means that if the first case was true, just break and don't continue the other codes that are inside this. Or for example, case item.belt, for example, increase the defense. Then again break. So if it was belt, then don't continue the other case that we have. Just exit the code. And if we have this, wait, this is like that, okay. For example, the shield also increase the defense. For example, if it increases it by 2, it will decrease it by 10. Okay, just to tell you, explain the logic. And another thing is that you have to add a default. Okay. For example, you know item for example, was found, no item. And then break. So that is a switch. Now I want to explain you the class. What is a class? For example, we have the class player. It usually starts with the capital form. A class is, for example, you have a bunch of codes, you have variables, you have methods and or functions that do a specific thing, and you need that in other part of the project too. So you don't want to copy and paste all of them again. You just make an object from this class, and you can use it in other parts of the project too. That's why we say that C# is object-oriented language. So for example, we have public int health. We have, yes, public int string name. So I give it a val. So let's give it a value. The name is hero. So we have this. Okay. Why is it public? What does it mean? It means, and you can also add here, if you don't write anything, it means private. So it means that other classes, if you have other classes, they can recognize this, and also if you make this public, it means that they can access to these variables too, because sometimes you don't want that the other classes have access to this, so make them private. So I want to make it public. So we have this too inside this class. Also I want to have a method or function. For example, say public or private void. For example, the player wants to take damage. We have different ways to calculate that. You can use a function like this, or you can pass some parameters, for example, int damage. Okay? So you just say you have the health, okay? I copy and paste it just to say that this is the same, okay? And then we say minus damage. Okay? For example, we have another code that is for example, we have in Unity we usually separate the classes, but imagine that's, yeah, something like this. So this is a class of enemy. Okay? Imagine that I want to use this. I have the player class, so I make an object from that. Player is equal to new player. Okay, and then we make a function or a method, for example, called damage. And you can name it everything that you want. Then, you know, this player has all of the information here. So we say player dot take damage, for example 10. Why we do that? Because different enemies might for example inflict different damage amounts. This enemy 1, for example, gives 10 damage. Enemy 2 it might give you 20 damages. Okay? The code is the same, it is flexible. if this enemy attacks to the player, the damage would be 10. If this enemy attacks to the player, the damage would be 20. Okay, the void means that everything has been calculated and it doesn't return a value. For example, it wouldn't give you a number. It just do that and it doesn't return anything to you. It's just some type of calculation. But if you want that, for example, it gives you the number and you use that number. For example, if that number is 10, the health is 10, just alarm the player, okay, that you're going to die, then that is a different thing. So for that, we can say public int damage. Okay, we want to calculate the damage that the player gives to enemy. So it has enemy health and we have the damage. As I have declared the variable twice, this damage is different from this. This int is, again, you know, there are two different things, and this is inside the function, so the damage is just for this, and the second one is just this for this. So they are not the same, okay? Just the naming are the same. But if I declare it here and I use that, then they are the same. So if you want to make them the damage the same number, you have to say int damage here and use the damage there. And now we'll calculate that the enemy health, yes, minus damage, okay? And then what does he want from me? The result would be return this, okay? Because this will give me an int. For example, like have the enemy health. Okay, this should not be here, but just I wanted to say how we can you know, the usages of this. Okay, and it goes float, boolean, yes. So that's it.